No, absolutely. And that correlation with evangelical Christians and the tie with like, man, some of these pastors that I see, like, I don't know if you know these guys, but like Jonathan Hagee, Kenneth Copeland, who else? Franklin Graham, Paula White, the lady Trump brought in as his spiritual advisor. I mean, I watch the stuff they put out and it's just insane. Like, it's insane. But there are millions of Christians in the United States that are following that. And a lot of that, I mean, man, that, man, there's so much to that with the Schofield Bible and this concept of dispensationalism and all that, which we won't get into that today. But man, I'm really sorry to hear about the work related stuff too. And I remember seeing a couple posts from you where you got shows canceled on you because of certain things. You know, what's interesting is what I started out saying, what gravitated me toward your content was the fact that you are Jewish and you're speaking up about this. In my opinion, that just hits so much harder and there's so much more credibility coming from you. I never thought about the flip side of then you getting, I guess, bombarded even more because you're Jewish. And what you said earlier about, you know, almost like if it's a black comedian or a white comedian or an Indian or whatever comedian talking about it, maybe it's tolerated better. But the fact that it's a Jewish comedian talking about it, it's not tolerated better. That's pretty wild, man. That's pretty wild. All right.
No, it's weird. Yeah, for sure. One of the shows that I got canceled. There's a video that went viral of me, getting assaulted, and I had previously done a show at that establishment, and there were a lot of, people talking about Palestine, and they honestly they weren't even getting laughs
Mm.
with the way they were presenting, their jokes, and it didn't seem to be an issue for the club owner. And then once I got up there and I started getting laughs, and the way I'm talking about it, and the audience responding positive towards me, we saw what happened towards me. They canceled my show. The guy put his hands on. So it is a strange thing, And I was at a show not too long ago, and I was talking about it, and Jewish people got very upset, and they said that they like coming from you, another Jewish person. It just is a lot to take in. It's too much to handle. And it's like, that's my whole spiel, because I wanted to become a Jewish person because I'm trying to wake up these other Jewish people to realize that what is being done in our name isn't right. What is happening isn't right. And, when I make my videos, like a lot of times I'm making it for them. I'm making it for these other Jewish people to try to hopefully, and some people I have gotten through to, I have gotten some great messages. Those have been the most rewarding from other Jewish people that are like, wow, we saw your videos and some other people's videos and went and did some research, and we really realized what's happening, or your videos gave me the courage to speak up against my family. And that's what we have to do. That's what it means to be Jewish. And it's just so ridiculous. I get it. People love Israel. They were brought up to love Israel. They've been indoctrinated to love Israel. And even maybe beyond the indoctrination, they went to Israel. They had a great experience. They have love for it. They want Jews to have a homeland. Okay, that's great. But like, you got to admit that like this isn't the dream of Israel. This isn't, what you want in your heart it to be. It's become a rogue state. And your silence isn't helping Israel. It's not helping the Jewish people. It's just making more Jewish people complicit in the crimes of this state that is currently being controlled by terrorists and criminals, like in their own merits in Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu on trial, bribery, fraud, breach of trust. Itamar Ben-Gvir, what a minister of national security, was convicted in Israel for inciting racism and supporting terrorism. Bezalel Smotrich, their finance minister, he has been arrested for suspicions of planting bombs. He's not only an illegal settler, he went outside the settlement and took his own land, his own Palestinian land. Like, these are not good people. It's like,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
calls coming from inside the house.
Yeah, I love that, man. The calls coming from inside the house. You know, have you watched that BB Files? It's a documentary called The BB Files. Have you seen that or heard about that? Okay, I haven't watched that. What about there was another documentary I watched which was very enlightening for me. Israelism or Israelism, I don't know how they pronounce it. I
Sure, Israelism,
Yeah.
I've seen that. That's great. And I think that is a movement that we've seen more and more. Of course, Simone, one of the people that
Yeah.
is featured in Israelism as one of the founders of IfNotNow, an organization made up of Jewish people who are saying, like, not in our name. We have to come together. We have to speak up. What's happening? We've been lied to, and what's happening isn't right and doesn't represent the values of Judaism and isn't who we want to be.
Right.
They're everyone's crying and complaining, anti-Semitism, anti-Semitism, anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism exists. It's a real thing. But what Israel has done is it's made it virtually meaningless because it's made, any criticism of it considered anti-Semitism. It's labeled all its critics anti-Semites, and it's like the boy who cried anti-Semitism.
Yeah, yeah, no, no, totally. I think without them realizing, they've really watered down the meaning of that to their detriment. The that If Not Now organization, they seem like they've gotten some traction, and that I didn't know that's all Jewish people. It's pretty much all Jewish people that are part of that.
Yeah, it's all Jewish people, and like, I think all Jewish people should be watching Israelism because
Yeah,
all Jewish people had this experience, and a lot of them don't realize it, and a lot of them like don't want to because a lot of Jews just were brought up, loving Israel. Israel's great. Israel's the safest place for Jews, which isn't true. I mean, it's not hard to realize that Israel is literally the most dangerous place for Jewish people in the world and puts Jews everywhere in danger. But that's what people were ingrained to believe. And oh, maybe they went there for the bar mitzvah, or maybe they just went on birthright and they had an amazing trip for 2 weeks and they have all this, great feelings about Israel, and they were fed a bunch of lies about Israel. But when they start hearing the reality and finding out the reality, or if they're lucky, get to go experience them themselves, like Simone and Israelism did, going to Palestine and talking to Palestinians and understanding that what they've been told just isn't true.
yeah, that's fascinating. But man, it's like, again, as an outsider, I've said this 100 times in practically every interview that I've talked about. It's like, I don't necessarily have skin in that game. I'm not Palestinian, I'm not Jewish, but I'm a human being. And the way I look at everything is truly through that lens of a human being. And then I do role reversal a lot. Like, I think to myself, okay, if the roles were reversed right now, and this was Hamas or any organization that was Palestinian led, and they were just bombarding Israel and killing Israeli children and killing Israeli women and destroying the infrastructure of Tel Aviv and all the amazing cities that are there, I'd be going just as crazy. Like, to me, it has nothing to do with, the country, the religion, or anything. It's purely a humanitarian look. And I know you feel that same way. God, it's so wild, like, how we are so divided, or there is a division on this. It's kind of like the Epstein files right now. Like, to me, the Epstein files, I'm like, it's pedophilia. What are we arguing about? Like, there are people that did really bad stuff to underage girls. How is anybody on that side? It just doesn't make sense.
No, absolutely. It doesn't make sense, any of it at all. And, there people think that they're connected.
Yeah, yeah. Do you go, I mean, New York City is a hotbed of, activism and the protesting and all that. Like, do you take part in that stuff, or do you not go into that?
I mean, yes, I've been to, a number of protests here in the city, but, I participate in them. But, I feel like most of my advocacy has been, short form content on social media. But yeah, I've been to a bunch of them. I never felt unsafe as a
Okay.
Jewish person at any of them. I've met some lovely people at all of them that I've been to. The only scary parts for me have been the Zionists that have been there at different, protests. At one protest, I was at a cultural protest. It was one of the most beautiful protests I've ever been a part of. And it was a bunch of artists and there was singing and dancing. And there were just these vile Zionists chasing us around with the bullhorn, just screaming the most vile, disgusting things that just like had nothing to do with anything. The protests were about, again, ending the suffering of the Palestinian people, ending the violations, not turning this into you're all Hamas supporters who, sexually assault everybody. And that's what the Zionists were. The intimidation factor that they gave, it was just horrible. You could only imagine what it's like for the Palestinian people in the West Bank and how intimidated they are,
Yeah.
and how, these people come and they're intimidating our protests, like they are intimidating them off their land, stealing their, their livestock, murdering them. An American was just killed, beat to death not too long ago by settlers. And that's what's happening. And you see that, you see them there. And I've seen there, it's just been very scary to see them, and, the hatred and their attitudes and the ugliness. And it's just like, we're speaking up against violence. We're speaking up against the genocide that's happening right now. And they're bringing, just such incredible hatred. It's just crazy. With a little bit of victimhood, like, they're the ones put in some sort of bad position or danger.
Yeah, yeah. The stuff in the West Bank, I mean, people aren't even really that aware of what's going on there. And it's crazy. In my research, I've always I've always felt like the West Bank is the crown jewel. Like that's really what guys like Ben Gvir and Smoltrich and even Netanyahu, they really want the West Bank. Judea and Samaria, from what I understand, the actual terms are in terms of what they refer to it as. But I feel like that's what they really want. They want full control and get rid of all the Palestinians in the West Bank. And to me, I always think like, man, is Gaza the appetizer for that? Or is Gaza the distraction while they're basically doing what they're doing, expanding settlements, just causing tremendous violence in order to get the West Bank? It's like everybody's paying attention here, and then over here is just, berserk.
No, absolutely. And, it's just such the fallacy of Hamas is just so clearly on display in the West Bank, was how they want to blame everything on
Yeah,
Hamas, while Hamas isn't controlling the West Bank. And they are, constantly bulldozing homes, raiding homes in the West Bank. They talk about hostages and returning the hostages. They have taken thousands of hostages, just breaking into people's homes in the West Bank in the middle of the night and dragging them from their homes for no reason, bringing them into administrative detention, not having them have a trial, not having them even know
yeah,
what they were taken for. And this is happening. I believe I saw just a headline today that, Israel's talking more about annexing all of the West Bank. We know Miriam Adelson gave Trump like $100 million to annex all of the West Bank. And we're seeing it happen. And we're seeing these violent settlers, from the horrible thing that happened with the 20-year-old American
yeah,
from Tampa,
yeah. I
Florida,
saw that.
who was killed a couple years ago. It was an American journalist, Shirin Abu Akleh, that was killed. There was an American Turkish protester that was killed not too long ago. Of course, always they're like, it's a mistake. It's a mistake. It's a mistake. Anytime, they do something wrong, it's a mistake. And hell, they do a lot of mistakes. But they are committing atrocity, and they are making life very uncomfortable. Saying making it very uncomfortable is putting it
Yeah,
extremely
yeah,
nicely, okay? Because it's like, it's a living hell, and you're like, how could it be even a living hell when you see Gaza, which looks exactly like hell on earth? But it is. It's never knowing when soldiers are going to break into your house and kidnap you. It's not knowing if your home is going to be there tomorrow. It's not knowing if settlers are going to burn it, if they're going to commit violence. It's not knowing what is going to happen. It's living in this kind of purgatory because they do want that land and they intend to take all of it.
Want the full truth? Watch the full Deep Shallow Dive interview next. And hit subscribe if you're done with narratives and ready to call a spade a spade.